What you guys been up to?
I just got done. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean
Oh, go
to
for it.
speak over you.
Go for it.
I just got done reading that old gymnasium
Oh yeah.
article you sent.
What do you think?
Is pretty good. I really liked it, actually.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's 1859, and
Yeah,
it's the same problems we have now, and they were trying to fix them then, and they're looking back to the old ways and trying their own version of it.
yeah.
And yeah,
When you read something like that, and then you compare it, however many years ago, that was 170 years ago, something like that, and it's the same stuff. It's incredible that, I don't know, not much has changed.
uh, yeah, I couldn't believe it when I saw that article. It was in the Atlantic, so I just started. I was in the process of ignoring it when I saw it because I stumbled across it on Google, and when I was looking up the ancient gymnasiums, and I was just about to click away because I saw it was Atlantic, and then I just saw the date, and I thought, hang on, wait a minute, I didn't know they were out then, but it was like, see the quality of that writing and the knowledge, like just the erudition of the guy. Uh, it's just like he just assumes that everyone knows a whole bunch of stuff that you just wouldn't see now like that. It's like way more.
It's dumbed down now.
Yeah, it's much more dumbed down, and we don't even realize it. I mean, that was just normal writing then.
I wonder who was reading the Atlantic back then. I wonder who was subscribing to it.
Be pretty different, yeah.
It was just it's probably just well-educated people, the ones that could afford going out and buying the Atlantic or whatever every month were the same ones that could afford buying college.
Yeah, I heard a guy. There's a education. I don't know what you call him, education philosopher, maybe. He was talking about the best sellers in those days. I think Last of the Mohicans was the best seller, and it's not like it's just assumes a certain level of intelligence in the reader that you wouldn't get in a bestseller now.
It's a pretty dense book.
Yeah. Exactly, that's what he was saying. That was just a bestseller. They were reading it in schools. He was also talking about the up until I forget where it was, but somewhere in America, they were teaching. It was standard for. Oh, I can't remember the age now, but it was like very young children were reading Caesar's The Gallic Wars in translation, and then like 2 or 3 grades above, they were reading it. The serious people were reading it in Latin, and it was like ultra young, and it's just like no one even reads that book anymore. And his idea was the reason is because it's telling people if you have a small group of people who are highly disciplined, they can take over everything if they're more organized than the other people, which is not good. Which people don't really want their citizens, learning those things anymore.
Subjects. Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, he's sending me an article to the Atlantic because now it's just like terrible. But even not that long ago, it was pretty good. I used to read it like maybe 10 years ago. I would find articles in there that were interesting. But the quality has just gone way down, and everything's politically motivated and all that. So that was a great find. So there's another guy in there that was mentioned that I have to research more. The last name was Ling, and
the Swedish gymnastics guy.
He reintroduced the idea of the gymnasium or gymnastics to Sweden and a lot of Europe. But it's interesting. I see the influence in that because there's a bunch of on Instagram, you have a lot of these people that are into gymnastics, and they're Scandinavian. A lot of them are. Right. So it seems like that was something that he did in a long time ago. I think he died in 1840 or something, 1839. So whatever, his work was 250 years ago. And it's really still, in my eyes, it's still influencing that population, a certain number or a certain amount of or proportion of the Swedish population is still interested in gymnastics, more so than any, not saying that more so than any other country, but it's definitely, I see it there.
Yeah, and it also influenced that whole movement or whatever in Europe, Northern Europe, gymnastics influenced the Western understanding of yoga and made yoga a lot more fitness looking than the more kind of sitting, breathing exercises you would maybe get the original version of it. For better and worse, it's a complex topic. For people listening, it's called the article is called The Gymnasium. It's written by David William Cheever, which sounds like a good old style name. So check it out. It's easy to find on Google.
Yeah, I was just sharing a couple of like screenshots from the article, and I think Erik asked, and I linked below it too. So not that that's going to be relevant when this comes out, but I guess we could put the link somewhere, or people could just ask.
Ooh. Yeah, I didn't read the article, but it's interesting, Keith, you said that we have the same problems today, or they've always been around, but it's weird because I think the magnitude of the issues are so much greater now, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's a fairly sorry.
No, the same general thrust was toward degeneration of the body and mind, and I guess this guy and probably many others were kind of trying to head it off the pass, before it got too bad, but didn't work.
Yeah, it's kind of working against the grain to
because that's from like in Europe at that point, then that's like it's not that historically it's not that long since Industrial Revolution and things, so it's very different for people than traditional, and then obviously slightly different timescales, but similar in America around then, and maybe for them it was. In one way, it was easier to notice. Maybe it looked strong, like the degeneration was more obvious and looked stronger to them. Whereas we're so far deep in it, we can't even see.
Yeah,
we're like it's so just normal to us that we can't even see that it is that until we have to have a really extreme alternative model of what's possible, which would explain why so many people are looking back to like old things now. In order to go, wait a minute, I mean, how is it possible that you have these things that far back and then now it's like this? And then you get kind of, okay, maybe all the new stuff isn't all good.
Yeah, there was one line in there, I could vaguely remember it, but it was something to the effect of there was I think it was talking specifically about the American population. He was talking about the American population, but he said like they were one generation removed from being like very strong, robust, and then in terms of one generation going more into these mechanistic jobs, industrial revolution jobs, where they were more inside in factories or doing clerical work, that you almost lost a sizable proportion of people, just their overall physical wellness degraded significantly within one generation's time. So you're always, I mean, that's true for a lot of things, right? Like you're always one generation away from significant changes in society in a lot of ways. And that's why it's important to continuously pass the torch, teach kids what what's important, so it doesn't, the things that are important stay alive.
It's not even just teaching though, is it? It's also if you are living really badly and then at that point of breeding, when you're living really badly, it's passing on something in the way the genes are going to express themselves in the person, or it's passing on. It's the child is not going to be as healthy as it would be if you were more healthy when you got down to business.
Yeah.
Yep. Keith, something crazy that came to me when you mentioned how they were one generation removed from from the onset of the Industrial Revolution. So he was talking about people who were working in factories and using machines and stuff, and he was already noticing a huge drop off in their physical robustness, strength, all that. It's funny because when you think about now, when you think about people who work factory jobs or still working the trades, those are the guys that are like still really strong physically, still really fit, able. And just imagine what the drop off is, because if those guys are still really quite robust to us, to guys working in offices and whatnot, imagine what the generation prior to the writer of this article, how robust they must have been. Frontiersmen, people who went out west and built homes and fought off Indians. Pretty nuts. It's hard to imagine, actually.
No, I mean, you hit on a great point. It's like, if that's the bar that we think is high, then what was the bar for them? Because that's even removed from that. But those were hard people, right? I mean, you had to, much harder than me. I mean, I'd probably try to go out west and die pretty shortly thereafter.
Well, if you were back then, you'd be a different person. You would have come from different stock and had a different childhood. But yeah, I get your point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty incredible how things change. I mean, it's also really good in other ways too, right? Some aspects of it, guess, not in like the physical body, I suppose, but
well, heading for the frontiers is not all the people, but some of them are a certain section of them will be self-selected for people who are already robust and are drawn to that, or like have to do that, as well as like there'll be like there'll be the people that go in groups that are more kind of group oriented, and then there's that more kind of the more archetypal, rugged individualist that is kind of overplayed, but it's still a real thing. And then obviously the ones who survive, the most rugged ones or the most dexterous ones or the most lucky ones would be the ones that had children, obviously. So it's possible that most rugged ones didn't survive because they were taking more risks. So maybe that even knocked it down a bit. So
I've seen an old paper once. I'll try to look for it and we can put it in the show notes. But it was they were applying these they were having a bunch of different groups of people, like English sailors, slaves, I think they had Iroquois, and they had they were taking groups from each of these different populations, and they were having them do these exercises like these old-timey, sort of like it was basically like a deadlift, where you're like lifting a pulley, you're pulling a cord and they're measuring the strength. And these guys, these are just normal dudes, and they were pulling 450, 500 pounds. And they were also, 140 pounds. Like they were light. These were small guys. And these are just average Joes who were, either soldiers or sailors or guys working in factories. It was pretty interesting. I think the strongest was the Iroquois. So
really with similar stature and everything.
I mean, I don't think they controlled for height and weight, but people. I mean, nobody was approaching 200 pounds at that point. They're all pretty lean and lithe.
So there's like many factors there, then, isn't there? There's what you were doing through your life. Well, there's obviously your heritage and the parents and that kind of thing, but then there's your genetics, and then there's what you were doing from an early age, because you don't know how much, if you're having to do these things very young, you don't know how much that's triggering something in you that will make you different when you're stronger as an adult, that if you miss that critical period when you're younger of that development, then you're not as strong or whatever when you're older. It's bound to be some of that. There's bound to be some kind of mind body way of thinking that helps them with stuff. They could be using their like fascia better than other people using fascia, that they're more reliant on muscles so they can lift stronger. It could be anything. the spirits might be helping them. It might be anything.
Yeah. And I think also another factor against them was that they were pretty naive to these exercises. They hadn't been training the particular movement. Oh yeah, here I found the study right here. Let me see.
But also, if your like lifestyle is doing a variation of all alternatives, lots of different variations on a similar movement, and then you're just asked to do one that's relatively straightforward or one single movement that doesn't have any before and after stuff, and it's not in the middle of this other day of doing all this other work, it's probably pretty easy to them. This is like this is like child's play, this one.
Definitely. It was so they did, let me look. They did white soldiers, sailors, students, full blacks, mulattoes, and Indians. And they're pulling between 300 and 420 pounds. And they said that these are people in usual vigor, very scientific biomarkers. I like that.
Usual vigor.
Yeah, but pretty large sample sizes. Thousands of actual people in each group, so it was a pretty large spread. And so that's the average, that's the mean. So there were probably guys who were pulling 600 pounds and just bringing the average up.
Incredible,
right? Wild.
Again, back to this like major point is like how much stronger, more durable were people ever. How many generations back is that? 5 maybe?
Yeah.
Or more, I guess. I don't know what time frame constitutes a generation. 20 years? 25 years?
I guess it changes now. It's probably longer.
Yeah, I mean, my dad has sheep, and one year they got the taps, the rams from somewhere else, and they weren't as good, and it was one of them wasn't as good, and it was visible in the lambs straight away. It's really like there was no time historical. There was no large phase where they got, like, it was just visible that year that there's just not as good. So it's going to be something similar with people.
Yeah.
Whether we like it or not.
If you guys are interested, I found the max for each group, the PRs.
Tell us.
For white soldiers from the earlier, I guess they studied white soldiers at different time periods. From one group, the max was 650, and that was his previous occupation was a cooper. The next group, also white soldiers, a blacksmith, a guy who used to be a blacksmith, pulled 840 pounds. Sailor was 640. Student was 662. Full black, who used to be a field hand. I'm not sure if that's slave or not. I can't remember the time. 624. The strongest mulatto, quote unquote, was pulled 695 pounds. And then the strongest Indian, who was a farmer, pulled 741. And so those are the PRs. And these are guys who obviously they've worked hard their whole lives, but they weren't lifting weights as we think of it.
Right.
It's wild. Yeah.
They were just laboring.
Yeah. Just putting in the reps.
I wonder if there's something to that where, like, I don't know where I'm remembering this from, but the idea, there's like a fitness program where you, some kind of strength training thing where you're continually doing sort of moderate level of weight for ages, and then every now and again that you do a really big pull or lift or whatever it is, and that kind of ongoing maintenance is like a lot of ongoing maintenance, and then you are able to do much more later. So maybe if they're living at that ongoing maintenance level for so long, and they're not fucking themselves up and wrecking their joints by training so hard with heavy weights so much that a lot of people do, that then when they go to do the big one, and because it's not that common, they're maybe just much better able to do it.
I mean, that has to be it, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not hauling like a 500 pound sack of grain at any point, or you're just kind of doing probably 50 to 100 pounds over and over again.
If that.
And also, maybe they just wanted to beat these incomers at the weightlifting competition.
Yeah, I mean,
it was as simple as that.
Yeah, of course.
More incentive.
For I found some other stats for American men as of 2011. They actually had them deadlift. 50th percentile was 176 pounds. That's a max. 75th percentile, 268 pounds. 85th percentile, 295. 95th percentile, 341. 99th percentile is 482 pounds. So that gives you a little comparison.
Yeah. Where do you land?
Well, now I haven't been deadlifting in a while, but I would be probably above the 95th, but not quite 99th. Yeah, at my height.
I don't know where I land because I've never tried for personal best on deadlift.
Yeah.
I don't know. The stones in the woods don't have any numbers written on them. I'm not sure.
No,
but they're not that big. No, they're way lighter than this, and way lighter than you, Erik. So basically, this is just like one set of standards from that time. So you have no idea the power people could have had in running over short distances, uphill, downhill, and all that stuff. Yeah. With carrying weights.
There's this one. I guess there's this ancient. They found these set of footprints somewhere. I want to say either Australia or Africa. I think it was Australia, and they did some math. They looked at it. It was a set of well preserved footprints. Someone had obviously been running and sprinting, and they gauged that this person was going basically as fast as Usain Bolt does is in his 100-meter dashes. And this is just someone who is we don't know why they were running. We don't know what they were. We don't even know what species it was. I think it may have been Homo erectus. I'm not sure. Can't remember. But basically, it was just someone who was out there running. Maybe they were running for their life. Maybe they were going all out. But they were easily going at Olympic level speed, which is pretty wild because that's just a random sampling of a set of footprints.
Yeah, and I get winded after not very far distances. So how the mighty have fallen.
Well, there's a theory. I mean, I don't follow these things enough, and I don't understand them enough. But there's a theory that people in terms of evolution, people don't really think much about it. You just assume you see apes and monkeys and that, and then you just think, well, we used to be like that, and now we advanced, and now we're like this. But there's the theory that they're way farther down degeneration of an old version. There was an old version that was more advanced than us on them, and they've deteriorated very fastly, and then we're deteriorating a little bit more slowly. So we're the shit versions of the old thing, and that would be more that would be increase the terror. This makes that even more terrifying that we're just this is the tail end of it all, and we're just noticing that we're fucked. There's a light note. So we're here now. Now what?
Thanks. Oh boy.
Hello?
You're back.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. I was using my 4G and then it seemed to collapse. So, sorry.
You gotta go 5G.
5G, yeah.
Gotta go 5G, man.
I know my brain's I feel too clear-headed just now. I need to get the 5G, calm this down. So maybe just the internet didn't want me to share the origins of the human species there. It was too much.
Yeah, you
I hurt everybody. I hurt the AI's feelings.
Yeah, you must have said something that wasn't supposed to be said. So anyway, I was on a trip down to the Carolinas. So I one of my friends that lives up here, he rented a place in North Carolina, and then I have another friend that lives in Charleston. So I went down there for the week, kind of split between the two places, just to hang out, do something different, see what I had never been to either one of those spots. So I've been to other places in each one of those states, but never specifically those towns. But it was good. One of the things that I think, especially when you're traveling, is just harder to, I don't know, you're on the road, you're just not in your normal rhythms. So it's harder to keep up with certain like patterns that you like to stay in, which is good and bad, because one, you could kind of knock yourself out of some things that aren't working, and then it's just harder to stay on top of other things. Like there was, I found it easier to fast. I'll tell you that much, because like the one day I drove back, which was on Easter, I left early in the morning. I didn't eat all day, but I was just driving for 8 hours after having slept for 8 hours. So that was an easy 16-hour fast without even trying. But downside to that is I'm just sitting in the car all day, pretty much. It's kind of boring, not moving around a whole lot.
I lost you guys for a while there.
We're back.
Are we talking about sticking to a routine when you're traveling?
Yeah. So
yeah.
I mean,
okay, I missed that. Okay.
Oh, you cut out too?
Yeah. Okay, I was just checking. Yeah. So
okay, I was just talking to myself for like 3 minutes.
No, I heard that. I heard all.
I heard about the 16-hour fast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, that wasn't, I just made up that number. That wasn't even real.
What are you trying to do? We're trying to run a tight ship here, man. It's a legitimate operation.
Not with me around.
Unusual vigor.
So, yeah, Kevin, you said sticking to a schedule. Sometimes it's you gotta get off the schedule. You know, sometimes staying. I think it's more about being healthy is different in different places. At least for me, I don't know. Like I can't really stick to my schedule in all places. I can't do what I would do at home. I can't do that, say, in Arizona, to use an example, all the time.
How does it change for you?
So, what's the food situation there, Keith?
How's the food?
They have food
in the Carolinas.
They have food down there. So I was into I've traveled down to the South before, and there's some areas where it's just like really crappy food at the restaurants, even the grocery stores and everything. There's just like, they think a vegetable is like green beans from a can. But the places I was in, one was Wilmington, North Carolina. The other one was Charleston, South Carolina. They're both pretty big cities or towns. So there's tons of options, good food. There's a few markets, or at least one co-op and farmers market I went to in Wilmington that had really good fresh food. So that was great. And then Charleston, same thing. They had, I didn't go on any farmers markets there, but I went out to eat a couple places, and same food as you get anywhere else. I was able to find pretty healthy options and all that. It's not that different from anywhere else, I guess, you go in the country. What about for you? Did you find it hard to source certain foods that you like, or you try to stick with like local cuisine and stuff?
Yeah, the food. So we went to Arizona over spring break, to Sedona, which is a beautiful town. It's this town surrounded by all these giant rocks that are sort of looming all around the horizon, and they're really high in iron, so they're red, and especially at sunset and sunrise, the whole place lights up. You know, I was pretty unimpressed with the food. That was the low point of the trip. it was high season, so places were crowded. So anywhere decent was going to be impossible to find a place to eat, find a table. So we didn't have I didn't have a place to cook or anything. So it was, so it was a lot of like, I would just buy stuff from Whole Foods, stuff that you could like make in a microwave or just eat out of the container. Ate a lot of cottage cheese, a lot of fresh fruit. And we found a couple of places that were pretty decent, but even the places that were had huge accolades, on like whatever random travel review sites or even from recommendations, just weren't that great. Pretty disappointing. But
yeah, I found that in general, over the past couple of years, the quality of restaurants is just way down. So even places that I used to go to and like would have a great meal, they just don't have either can't source the same ingredients, or they don't have as good a quality of chefs or whatever preparing the food. It's just not the same. And I don't know, and maybe my taste has just grown to prefer different, more fresh stuff. I don't know. That's probably not it. But I think just over the past couple of years, the quality in restaurants has gone way down.
I've noticed the same.
I remember it being.
I noticed the same thing. I mean, I live in California, and it's a good food state. There's something's always growing. There's a lot of farmers markets all the time. But even now, I find myself just really preferring to eat at home. I can't really think of there's no restaurant that I don't have a go-to restaurant that I can just, okay, we'll go here when we don't feel like cooking and trust that it's going to be a good meal. So nothing really even leaps out here. So I think a lot of it is just, there's general degeneration of the quality. But also I think what you said is actually true. I think standards have just risen, personal standards.
Yeah.
Except
I've been on not that I've been exclusively eating it, but since our trip earlier in the year, I've into Hawaii, just in general, I've been eating a lot more. Just meat and fruit has been a larger proportion of my diet, and I feel good on that. Not that that's the only thing that I'm eating. Like most days, I wake up and have like a slice of sourdough bread with butter. But a lot of my bigger meals consist more of like meat and fruit, and I feel good on that. And when I'm able to cook that, it always tastes really good. It always tastes really fresh. Yeah. And then when I come back to other stuff that's more like processed or anything like that, I just you could just taste that it's just not as good for you. Like it's not like it tastes good, but like immediately you feel like it's not as not as good. Not to mention the Kevin, I figured out that chocolate is toxic to me.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's probably half made up, mostly made up, but it's in my head now. So I just well, maybe I shouldn't get too far into this.
That's a definite, you have to say now.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just so there's a time period like last year when I didn't have chocolate for about like 6 months or so. I just didn't have a taste for it. Like it still tasted good, but I don't know, like the actual taste, like when I had chocolate was good, but my taste for it, my craving for it had gone away completely. And then just recently I realized when I would have chocolate, I would feel as if like I was getting like more inflamed just from the chocolate. So I don't know if it's maybe like certain bitter things are bitter for a reason, chocolate being one of them. And I don't know if maybe that could actually be why it's good for you, or possibly but it also, everything that it's good for you, but not for the reason that you think. It's good for you because it actually taxes your system a little bit, and then you're stronger for it because your body has to react by releasing whatever to counteract it. I'm not speaking very scientifically here, but
No, that's all accurate. That's usually how all the plant compounds work, like the so-called antioxidants. They work by they're kind of like minor pesticides that the plant manufactures, but we figured out a way to take advantage from it. It makes us stronger. So,
yeah. So that's why I think chocolate is mildly toxic to me.
So listeners, stop sending Keith boxes of chocolates for Christmas or whatever.
Yeah.
Flowers.
Make it edible arrangements only.
So that's eating when you're on eating routine when you're on a trip. What about exercise type of stuff?
I think it's really important to wake up and get outside immediately wherever you are, because oftentimes you'll be in a new time zone that you have to adjust to, and if you get outside first thing in the morning of your first day there or your first morning there, that really helps set a circadian rhythm for the rest of the trip. The combination of light in your eyes, movement, and if you can, I would also eat a meal right after, because all those three things, light, movement, and food, all kind of entrain your circadian rhythm to adjust to the new environment. So
you're gonna have less jet lag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great way to beat jet lag, is to just take a long walk or a run or a workout outside and then eat a big meal your first day there. So that's one thing, and then just being outside in the morning is good everywhere. It just becomes more good if that's I don't know if that's proper grammar.
And you're using your time better, because you can arrive and then you go to the hotel and sleep, and then you've lost a day. Where you just go, or however it works, and you should be still just using the time, because once you're home, you'll wish you'd use the time more, even if you were tired.
Yep.
So you can.
Yeah, a lot of times people will arrive somewhere and they're exhausted, and so they just like take this stupid nap, at like 3 p.m. at the new place, and then they wake up at midnight and they just got off to a terrible start. If you arrive somewhere, just stay up all day. Like if you arrive in the morning, just force yourself to stay up until the nighttime of the new location, and just kind of try to treat it like it's your normal environment, and then you'll beat jet lag that way.
Yeah, it's a lot easier when, like, for me, and I guess for you too, I wasn't switching time zones at all, so that was pretty easy.
Can't either. Yeah.
But I think like when we went to Hawaii, I think I was like delusional by the end of that first day, because I stayed up, and after 15 hours of travel too. So
you kept trying to leave the house. You didn't seem conscious. We had to physically restrain you.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
You're seeing things. It's crazy, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I went somewhere before where there was like a 4 hours difference, and I did the maths wrong in my head, and I thought I was 4 hours up, but actually I was 4 hours down. So that's what I was saying to people, "Oh, you must be tired." No, I'm 4 hours up. And that convinced me for hours. So I felt energized. It's not 2 a.m. It's still 6 a.m. for me. But actually it wasn't. It was the other way, or whatever way around. I've probably got it wrong again. So there's definitely a mental element to overcoming it to a certain point, and then after that, it's just you'll go mad like Keith.
Mm-hmm. So it doesn't take sleep deprivation for me to go mad.
Well, everyone has a different base level.
Yeah. In terms of exercise for me, I brought some of my stuff down with me, but I think I only actually worked out like once.
Are you allowed to take maces on the plane in America, or are you in the car?
Oh, I drove.
Oh,
I
you're in the
drove.
car.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had a
No one
couple of
had.
maces in the back of the car driving along in the south.
Yeah, they just rattle around in the in the trunk. No one was the wiser, and yeah. But I was just out doing different stuff. Like I said, I worked out like formally, if you want to call it that. One
Oh, with
day,
a suit and tie on.
yeah, I had a suit and tie
Bowler
on.
hat.
Yeah, I was still not wearing socks
Got a
though.
permit for it. Yeah, hold on.
That was good. But yeah, aside from that, it was just like walking around places. Like you're in a new spot, so you're exploring different stuff. One day I went paddleboarding with my buddy down in like the marsh area near Charleston. So I was pretty active. Oh, let me tell you about that.
You paddle through a marsh? I didn't know. I guess I don't really know. I assume a marsh is more swamp-like.
It is, but it's not. It's like that area of South Carolina is like a big delta area. So it's all like,
So wet.
it's very wet. Yeah. But it's all like just grasses and stuff. And then these like rivers wind through it as I guess they drain from wherever they drain from, the Blue Ridge Mountains, maybe. So it didn't seem that windy, but as soon as you get out on the water, we realized that there's like it's probably about like 25 miles an hour wind, like right in our face. So there's a certain point with like gusts over that. And there's a certain point, we're trying to paddle up this river a little bit. And standing up, I was paddling as hard as I could each side. I made zero progress. Like I'm watching the reeds next to me and I'm not able to, I'm just paddling as fast as the wind is pushing me back in the opposite direction. So for a while, we actually, I want to say the first like 20 minutes to a half an hour, I'm doing riding the stand-up paddleboard on my knees into the wind, just so I'm taking up less, there's less like wind resistance.
Yeah.
Into that. We finally get back into like an area where we're kind of sheltered, and then you could start cruising. Back there is really cool too, because the water's kind of shallow, and we had like a dolphin come up within like probably like 3 feet of us, which was cool. So, and we saw some other fish and stingrays and all that. The water's kind of murky there, but when you get into the shallow areas, you could see through it better. And then on the way back it was great because it was the same wind at our back. So essentially all we had to do was I sat down on the paddleboard and hung the paddle in the air, and the face of the paddle is not very big. It's maybe 10 inches wide and a foot tall or so. I mean, but it's shaped like a triangle. And I just had that in the air, and having that in the air and spinning it, I could actually direct the wind was taking me, and I could direct myself with that as if it were like a sail or a rudder in the air. And the wind was blowing so hard, it just took us right back in. But it was a cool day. Like I said, I hadn't been down that area before. And it was good.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah. And besides, other than that type of stuff, it was just a lot of, like I said, walking around. I was always staying active isn't really hard when you're on vacation, just because you're on vacation. I don't even know if I consider it vacation, but I was on a trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't doing any of the breath holding for about a week, so didn't really concentrate on any of that stuff. But I think you almost come back a little bit stronger after holding off on that. Like taking a week away from your regular routines, the stuff that you do want to get back into, you end up being a little bit better at it. Like your body recovers in certain ways, and you you kind of lost all that other baggage, so to speak.
It's the deload week. I mean,
yeah, a deload week.
Strength training, bodybuilding. Take a week off, you come back, you're stronger. It applies to everything.
Yeah, I noticed it recently with running. So just like a week or so of running, and I went back to it was just way stronger and less tired doing the loops I'd been doing. It's really good for me. Like routines, I don't have like a strict routine that I do anyway. So when I just kind of my routine's more kind of environment based anyway. So on day time based. So it depends where I am. I'll do one thing if I'm in the city. Certain days I'm in the city, and other days so it's somewhere more rural, and so I do different things there just automatically based on where I am. And then I just kind of go with what is there, and I'll just do something as I pass somewhere on the street or whatever, and or like wherever I am, and so I don't really need to think of it as being out of routine. So like you get a lot of guys who'll talk about the rubbish hotel gyms, compared to the gym. There used to all the stuff, and then there's this rubbish gym in the hotel. I was in a hotel the other day and there was a gym, and so I went down and played in the gym because this is the most equipment I have had for a long time, in a tiny little rubbish hotel gym, because I don't use that stuff really. And so like there was like basic stuff. So to me that was like a playground, playing in the playground, like playing with someone else's toys. But for other people that's opposite. So for me, staying in the routine like that is easy. I didn't feel like I was missing anything at all. And then when I come back, I'm not missing that either. I'm doing whatever I'm doing here.
Yeah.
Those gyms are always wild to me. You'll see people like just walking on the treadmill, in some beautiful tropical island.
Yeah.
Just like walk outside, walk.
Yeah, they don't realize it's right there for you, but some people are just blind to it, I guess.
Yeah, on our trip, we did a ton of hiking because it's basically that's the best thing to do there. There are just amazing hikes and trails and rocks to climb. It's this really beautiful rock that has great traction on the feet, so it's perfect for it can be a really steep face, but you can just kind of walk up it. And so I would just go with I would take my kids. My wife's knee was hurting a bit, so she couldn't do many of the climbs, but we would just climb up these giant rocks and, usually barefoot, because that actually gives you better traction. And we were just basically walking all day in that. So I felt no need to actually lift any weights or anything, because sometimes I'd have a kid on my shoulders or something. So that helps.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I agree. The best way is to just walk around and kind of generally be active.
You
posted. Oh, what?
Sorry?
Go ahead.
I was just Keith posted something recently about what was it called? Micro training or something. What was it?
Micro workout?
Microdosing training or microdosing exercises. You posted some video, Keith. Or was it you, Eric?
Wasn't me.
Or some guy. I think it was you. It was like a guy who was on a podcast, and it was a clip of a guy, and he was saying how he just does little, rather than making a big deal about exercise routines, he'll just do the little thing in the moment he can do it. So he's driving and he's got one of those things you use in your hand. I forget what they call them now. For your training grip strength. So he's got one of them in his hands. He's driving, and then you're just passing the pull-up bar in the house. So you do some then, and it was like microdosing. I'm sure you even tweeted out and said something about it, Keith. This could be the madness thing as well.
Maybe.
So we've talked about that before. I know micro workouts, things like that. Yeah, that's kind of how I do it. Just have
that's how I do it now.
Lying around the house or the yard, you see it and you're inspired to do a few reps.
Yeah, like because on the way home from the hotel that we were at the other day, it was up in the mountains, and then we came back down. There's like this really nice dam, really nice area with a dam and stuff in here, and so we went there for a picnic, and ourselves putting together the sandwiches and stuff that we're eating. So like I thought, well, I'm about to eat, so I just opened the door and looked outside, big rock on the ground. So I just picked up the rock, started running around the car while the sandwich was being made, and then dropped the rock, sandwich, started eating the sandwich. Like it was So the thing I've been doing recently is if I know I'm going to eat, I have to do something small before I eat. So like you're just doing this extra thing. Doesn't matter what it is. And that's been quite good for me because you're just...
That's the rule you just made up for yourself.
Yeah, because what I normally would do is I would try and do a whole ton of stuff and really knocker myself, really like do too much, especially when it starts getting hot here, to go running in the heat and then to do other stuff. It's like you can't really do much after that. But then I was like, why am I even cramming them together? There's no need. I've got time and control myself. I can just do the other one later, and then I can get some like work done on the computer kind of stuff in between, rather than just having to go to sleep. Like, because at one point I would get up, I'd go out, I'd spend 2 hours doing things, I'd come back, I'd eat, and then I'd be so tired I would just end up going napping again. I've only been up 3 hours and I'm already napping. So, it's ridiculous. But that was just because I was just doing too much. But the other thing I found was, as a non-disciplined person, like by nature or habitually or however, trying to, because I tried all those routine, I tried all those like programs where you do like 3 days of all this stuff, where you do this and that, and it was all sort of spread out. None of that worked. I had to do something every day, or I wouldn't do it any days. Do you know what I mean? It was like, there's no way I would stick to this, that kind of, like I tried those things where you do this really intense things 2 days a week and stuff, and just knowing, like I'd forgotten by the third day I'd forgotten that I was doing it, and that I just had to get in the habit of doing something every day. So then when I started that, I went over the top and did too much every day, and then you just lose it again. So I just ended up with the sort of microdosing kind of idea where you that's just for sheer practicality, but it's much more happy doing it like that. And it breaks, if you're doing a lot of like computer work or writing, it really breaks up the day really well, really resets your mind. Then when you go back, you get maybe a few ideas pop in your head when you're exercising. But I find my best ideas come to me, people talk about it in the shower or when they're running and stuff. The best ideas for me is I'm writing away at the computer, and then I get up and go for a pee. And then just as the water hits the toilet, ping, ping, idea will come into my head, and then I'll go back and write it down. It's like clockwork. I don't know what it is now. I just like, I'm drinking water now so that I have more ideas later in the day.
That's great. Maybe it's the same ideas like the shower, but it's different type of.
Let's not put showers in the same conversation. It's too weird.
Your kidney is actually filtering out the clutter. The mental clutter.
Yeah, it must be.
Yeah.
Or maybe I've just spent an hour looking at what I've read and going, this is pish, this is pish, this is pish. And then when there is pish, then I get a better idea. Something like this. Balance.
Psychophysical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying. That definitely doesn't happen. Like, I don't notice more ideas that way. Normally what it is for me is I'm reading something or listening to something, and then it takes me, if I just read something straight through or listened to it straight through, it would take however long it takes. Say it takes an hour. But if I'm in like a mode where like ideas are coming to me, it's like, something came to me. Now I need 20 minutes to go actually think that through and what's actually happening there. And then I come back to the piece of writing or whatever I'm listening to. And it's like just the act of having my mind, like the whatever content I'm taking in is more so just like it ends up just playing in the background. And then my mind is like daydreaming while I'm doing this off into different things. It's not while I'm peeing.
One of the most annoying things if you get that rush of ideas like that is if you start writing them down in the wrong order. So if I try and like they come to me, and if I start focusing on getting one of them down right, I've then forgotten the other one. And like there's a certain order. I can't remember, is it? I think it's reverse order, or if I try and do them in chronological order, I forget the second one. But if I do them in reverse order, I can remember back to the first one. It's something weird like this. You
automatically take up the most recent one and then work your way
it's like
back.
The dreams. You try to remember a dream. You try to remember. If you try to go back to the earliest one, then I find you kind of have to work, for me anyway, you have to work your way back to find ideas. And then, but another trick that is psychophysical trick is just can't quite like I used to do this to dreams. I used to keep a dream journal ages ago, and if you can't quite remember them, is to get back into the position you were at when you were sleeping when you had the dream, and it'll come back to you. And I found sometimes with ideas, I had a good idea and I couldn't remember what it was, and I was at the computer, I was trying to write it down, I couldn't remember, and I went back and I'd been pacing through in a different room, going around in a circle, so I went back to do the same pacing that I was doing, and then I remembered it. So that's kind of like a sort of, I don't know, hypnosis anchoring thing, maybe reverse. I don't know how that works, but it seemed to work.
You put your body in the same state that the idea came in.
Yeah, it seemed to work. I don't know how long that would work for. I don't know if you can do it days later or not, but it seemed to work later that day.
I think that jives with my pet theory is that ideas are kind of just out in the environment, you know? And so if you're like, they may physically be in that room. So you because that's why I mean, I think long walks are really helpful for me and many other people. It's because I think you're just kind of, you're taking like a little trip through the idea store, you know, you're just kind of walking through. There's a bunch out there and the thing is most places you go walk, there's fewer people go there. So you get some really unique ideas because they're only there and not many people tap into it. I think that's part of it. Sounds kind of crazy, but I feel like this is a safe place to talk about that.
Yeah, you're among other crazy people.
Exactly.
Like an asylum here.
Yeah, so maybe there's a certain amount of communication coming from, you know, the natural world, let's call it, to the humans. Yeah. But there's only one human turning up now to get it, so he's getting it all at once and has to give it back to the rest of the humans.
Yeah. Keith, you guys are talking about how you write ideas down or take meaning from stuff you're reading. I actually find, you know, a lot of people criticize this, but I think it's really useful for me. I love, like, if I'm reading something or thinking about something, I'll just usually immediately, you know, send it in a group chat or text to someone, like often Keith or some of my other friends. Just kind of and then that way you've gotten it down in writing and it's kind of raw, you know, it's straight from your mind. I find that really helps. That's kind of how I take notes.
And also you're writing it in the words that come to you. It's raw. It's usually not well written. It's kind of, you know, but it's what came to you.
It's always very well written.
So now, of course. So now, but then when you go back to see it, because it's the real thing that came to you, now that can trace back to all the rest of the idea. Whereas if you start editing and making it pretty, then you're away from it now somehow. And that might be the reason why, and people always talk about their tweets that do well are the ones with the typo. You know, this happens all the time. You see a really popular tweet, retweet, it's like viral or whatever, and they have a slight typo in it, and I was like, oh, I never got to, I need an edit button. And but it might be because it's no longer the real thing anymore. You've slightly changed it, and you change a few words over here, and then that one doesn't go viral. You think that was a good one, and no one cared. And then one you seem shit because it's in the moment, and it's similar to you're saying it's out in the world. Because at that moment you had the idea, you were part of the world. It's not like the idea is not equal at other times and places. It's that place and time now. And then the edited, improved version is not the same thing anymore. That might be part of it. Yeah. And because I noticed, like, I start writing to Twitter, like I would write something, and then I'll go, that's not a very good way to start, and go back and start it. And all those ones always end up rubbish. And off the cuff ones seem to work better.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot
by
of
work, I mean people interact with.
Yeah, a lot of the threads that I end up writing start or mostly they originated in like a group chat, especially recently.
Yeah.
Or even you, Kevin. I think one of the threads I ended up writing to recently was something that I had originally written to you in a private message or a DM. But yeah, it is. There's some type of element, like you're in the idea has you, and as you're having it, right? Well, that's a weird thing to say, right? The idea has you as you're having it. Like you and the idea are both there and present, and that's when you're thinking about it. And then to actually record is to have to go back and remember it. And it's not always easy sometimes, and you have to work your way through, and it is rough to get it back to what it is. When you're having ideas, sometimes it's like I guess there's a subjective nature to it as well, because you feel a certain way as you're having the idea, that when you try to just take your later on, like you try to come back to it, you are not the same person you were when you were having the idea. You're just in a different what you're trying to be too objective about it, and then you realize that the idea wasn't that good, and it was kind of, you also felt good while you were having the idea. That's why you thought the idea was really good.
Also, like, ideas are like they're the tip of the iceberg. You know, they're just the bit that appeared in your awareness. Under the surface, there's a huge amount of thoughts and ideas that are connected with this. So you're just it's not in your conscious awareness now. So that's kind of risen. It's kind of bubbled up to the surface, and then if you don't run with it when it appears, that connection with all the deeper stuff that was the crest of the wave of, or however you want to think about it, peak of the mountain, whatever, is disconnected now. So now you're having to piece it together with words. It's like now it doesn't flow anymore. And then you get this really, like, if you're writing something, it's really kind of disjointed article or whatever. It doesn't really join anymore because you're trying to put other things in now, rather than just run with as it comes and then do an edit at the very end separately.
Yeah.
If you try and edit during, you just wreck it.
Yeah. If you are, say you're out walking and you have an idea that comes to you and you want to riff on that, how do you record it? Do you try to remember it when you get back, or do you just
usually just on my phone using voice to text in the Notes app on the iPhone?
He tattoos it on his arm like memento.
I have a tattoo artist that I've hired.
Take it around with you to help you remember stuff.
Yeah, because it's hard to do it with my left hand, you know.
You rent out his skin space?
Yeah.
So you don't have to put it on your own body?
I have a couple surrogates, on tap. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I just use the iPhone Notes app, and I just kind of do a rant or a ramble in voice to text. So I'll just talk, and it'll convert it, sometimes imperfectly, usually imperfectly, but I can usually get the gist of what I was trying to convey. Mm-hmm. That's usually how I do a lot of my writing too, is I'll do a rough draft that way on a walk.
Maybe it was the app I was using, but I tried that voice app during the lockdown, and it didn't understand anything I said. So
I came back the app. Definitely.
I came back in a rage. This thing's racist against Highlanders or Scottish people or whatever. But it was like garbage. It wasn't even close. It was like, listen, when I got home after my 2-hour walk, it turned out a lot of the good ideas I had were garbage. So it was the app, yeah. But it was like, but that was more. It was more practical though, for definite, than the stopping writing. You also look mental when you're stopping writing in a little notepad every 5 minutes, and then you start walking again, and then you're like back down again. You just look like you're up to something.
It's a tiny one. I mean, you look
small. That's the problem.
I found that I can do it translates better if I do like a bad Southern accent. So maybe you should try a different accent. Maybe you should
okay, that'll make me look less mental. Yeah, I'll do that. Different ones. I'll try all different ones as I'm walking in the street.
Yeah.
What would that be for you? I guess you would have to do
with no shoes on. I'm really looking good at this point. Like.
You have to do an English accent. That would be the equivalent for like if Eric's doing a Southern accent.
I can't do an English. I can't do an English accent. My jeans will start melting if I try an English accent.
Oh yeah, that's like bad.
It's a thing that's programmed into us.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. What a burden. I forgot what we were talking about.
Staying healthy while traveling. That was the.
Yeah. Whatever we got into is much better than that, though. So.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. What's the craziest idea you had recently?
I haven't really had any. Nothing crazy. Everything's very rational and logical. What about you, Keith? You had any crazy ideas lately? Anything come to you?
No. Yes.
All right.
I don't remember it fully, but I wrote it down. So I had a couple crazy idea tweet threads recently, and they had a lot to do with organization. Well, the way the body is organized is you have your bone structure and then your tissues over the top of it. And your bones just hang the tissues, and what your tissue, like muscles and everything else, is just directing energy. So, and it really is like your muscles are converting the food you take in. Muscles, digestive system, whatever it is. Your tissues are converting the food you take in, your environment, into usable energy. And it's all direct, and the bones just provide the kind of tell it what direction to go, and the muscle moves the energy. And right there is where I can't remember the actual point I was making with it.
What do you mean the bones tell it?
Well, the bones kind of form the shape, right? Because say if you were without a skeleton, you would essentially be an octopus, or
half of one.
Whatever. What's that?
Half an octopus.
Half an octopus, 4 limbs instead of 8. I got you. Yeah, so you can't it is, and not that an octopus isn't intelligent in its own way, but the bones map out an intelligent pathway for the energy to travel using your muscles. And you could articulate all your body in all these different ways, but the bones are kind of it is the structure. It is the underlying blueprint for how things are. And then the muscles move that energy in a way that's usable to a person to continue to, well, move and live and operate. And it's also I forget the corollaries to this idea because I wrote them down somewhere, but they escape me at the moment. Another thing I was thinking about was, so you have different phases of matter: solid, liquid, gas, all that. Most of the time you're operating in gas, just air around you. But when you think about the same thing with like a fish underwater, how it's always like breathing in water through the gills, you very much think that the fish is in the water. You don't think that you are in the air. You think you're out of water. But if you're in air, everything about you is designed to move the environment in and out of you. So your muscles are moving. Your diaphragm is a muscle that moves the air, that phase of whatever substrate air is. It's moving that in and out of you for you to be able to breathe. So in that way, you are part of your environment right there. Just you think you've partitioned an inside and out, but there's always something going in and out. And even the food you take in, the sunlight, that's permeating your skin to some level. You could absorb things through your skin. So there's a permeability that you are always part of that environment around you at some level. And all your skeleton structures you and your tissues, but it's only so you can move whatever environment around you into yourself or out of yourself. The same way, like you're always, what was the line from that one dexterity episode. You're feeding the worm, but you're doing it all these different ways, right? Like you're trying to get food into your mouth, but you're also you're very much just breathing in and out air all the time. So that you're constantly consuming whatever's around you, just by virtue of like you're not separate from those things. Like you are acting on your immediate environment, the room you're in, with the earth you're walking on, and all that, and then it's acting on you through that diffusion of energy. I don't know what you want to call it, but there's a few things, and there's a couple other ideas I had recently. I can't remember them all right now, but so you guys don't have any crazy ideas, just me?
That one doesn't seem crazy to me. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I say crazy. I don't really mean it's crazy. I just mean it's just not.
It's a different angle.
A different angle, yeah.
Yeah, like I remember you when you wrote that in our group chat. You had quite an essay on that. It was good. I like that.
Mm-hmm. I know I wrote something similar to Kevin too, somewhere along the line.
Yeah.
I had a question, Kevin, and this is also something I thought of recently, because I know you talk about the elastic structures, say like in your back, and you're trying to lengthen them, spread them out.
That's using bones, by the way. That's moving the bones around. It's not moving the bones around in order that it's stretched, rather than stretching them, because it makes you feel stretching them sounds like you're stretching them directly, like you're doing something with muscles. You can't. You use the muscles to move the bones around, so that between the bones, the elastic structure gets stretched. So it's similar to the bone thing you're talking about, actually, because it's what I'm teaching is the conscious, the reasoning about where to put the bones and how to use gravity, the weight and stuff, in order to stretch the elastic structures in a certain way. But so it's almost like an alliance between your conscious attention and the bones, and then the muscles that will just go along with those intentions, the right muscles. So it's like it's very different from getting deep into the muscles and feeling the body deeply and all that kind of stuff that people will teach. Most people teach something like that, and that's what people assume that I'm going to teach, but it's not. It's more way more bone orientated, actually. It's interesting you're saying this.
Yeah, so the question I had is, you know what a standing wave is? Like if you pluck a guitar string and you watch it close up, it'll hit a certain vibration, and it's vibrating at such a frequency that if you look at it, it doesn't look as if it's moving, because it's just hitting the same pattern so quickly, and your eye can't pick up on it. So if you think like that's just a wave is a form of energy, and you see it in a guitar string or any other types of things like that. So if you similarly, if you think say like a muscle in your back, if it's not in the right position between the bony structures, and you pluck it, it's not going to hit that standing wave pattern. It has to be at a certain length for the frequency to be right as the energy moves through it. This is more of like a conceptual exercise than what I actually think is happening in the body. But using that concept, if you are able to lengthen yourself in the right proportion, and taking that other idea that where I had is like the tissues in your body are essentially just directing energy. So if it's lengthened and positioned in the right area, you can get it's an explanation to why you can sit so still, and you're consciously doing it, but it's also because you've hit you in particular, Kevin, you say you can you position yourself and you could sit there for hours and you're not really working at it. But if you have those structures positioned in the right way, that energy is moving to where it's actually in the right alignment, so that wave is bouncing at the right frequency, so to speak, and you've essentially created a standing wave because the points are positioned in the right area where it's constant motion, but it doesn't look like that because it's so like in the pocket of resonance of where it needs to be.
Yes, yeah, it will look like that would make sense because there's constant movement, but it looks like it's still. So like there's resistance happening. So if you imagine like, somebody's pulling an elastic band apart, so you can stop and your two hands look like they're still, but the elastic's resisting pulling your hands. You're moving your hand, you're pulling your hands away apart, but they're not moving. They're tiny, to the eye, they're not really moving. So there's like a point where it rests in position. So there's that plus many of those. So there's like up and down. So there's separate movements. So there's like multiple ones at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Lots depends what you're doing. And also that interacts with weights, your movements with things you're in the world, the angle your body's at, then you're using gravity in a different way. But it's the same principle. Yeah, there's a point where you're poised, so you could take a snapshot and it looks still. But really there's all these movements of it's dynamic poise. There's like movements and then it just is reached a state. You can have a collapsed poise isn't the right word, but you can have a collapsed steady state or you can have a poised steady state. But yeah, it's something like that, like what you're saying about I've used that analogy before. It's like you're plucking the string.
Yeah.
By
So
moving them.
Yeah,
but there probably would be a sound. There would be a sound to this. I'm sure you could measure that. If you overstretch things, then it'll be a bad sound. Right. And then,
well,
but it has to be resonance with the other
guitar. There's a certain point when that string's actually in tune, and it's when there's the right amount of tension on that string, and otherwise it doesn't hit the right note that you want to play.
It's like a web of guitar strings but when you start tightening one over here, then it starts affecting the ones over here. It's not just like one string, but there's like main ones and the other ones attached to, there's probably like a Pareto law thing to do with one or two areas are much more important than the rest, but you need all of them. They all go together. Obviously it's like the back is the main area, but it's everywhere because your muscles have the same elastic, you can be straight, have elastic properties when they're lengthened, so like it's better you can lengthen them while you're contracting, which is good, like eccentric movements are good. It's a similar principle. But yeah, I like the music metaphor anyway, because we were talking about the ancient gymnasiums and stuff, and one of the things they're taught is music, and they were doing music along with movements, and I think they would have some kind of level of this. Some of the statues look musical the way they're structured and stuff. You can feel the harmony of some rules that you can't quite figure out what they are always.
This is super interesting because the first, I think this first paragraph in that essay is pretty much goes right into you have music and gymnastics, and those were the two like schools or two parts of what a gymnasium gymnasium.
Yeah, music's a broad category includes all of the what we now call intellectual stuff, because really it's just harmonizing, putting things together. It's like relationships between things.
Yeah. So you know how I say when I read stuff, I automatically go off on tangents. So that's when I have to write. That first line or that first paragraph put me off on a tangent. And that's something that I actually want to write about for this new thing that we might be coming out with. And we will be coming out with. And it played into exactly what you just described there, as if the the body is actually music. So like the music was actually talking about the body, and gymnastics was talking about form. But I'm not explaining it well because I don't have the idea solidified in my mind yet because I just wrote it earlier. But the idea here was that there's these, it's structured.
The music is formed through time.
Yeah, well, the extrapolation that I said, that I thought of, was that music is more informed. I'm sorry, what did I just say? Structured inspiration is what it was. So, and it's any form of art really is structured inspiration. So that's the same thing. You can relate that back to the body itself. It is a structure, and it's created out of nothing, and it forms into this structure. And then gymnastics is kind of how you use that, how it moves forward, how movement and force of this inspired structure moves. And that's a gymnasium combines those two things. It's the music, it's the art, it's the creation, the person, and how it moves through the rest of the environment around it. But I got to get more into depth or get that idea down a little bit more pat. But I think it was a nice, like it felt eloquent in my head when I was saying it. And then you just kind of confirmed it right there when you're saying, like, you could see, like there's an art when you see forms of dance or just some forms of people moving, you're like, wow, it seems like they're almost like their body's singing, it like you could tell that there's something more intelligent going on there than otherwise, then there would not be.
So when you say structured inspiration, that's what you mean, as in it's because it's not like those dancers that you're talking about, it's not like spontaneous where they're just expressing themselves randomly. There's a structure to it. There's patterns, there's mathematics of the movements, and but there's some kind of living energy that's the inspired part. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and that's a good classification, because it's a living energy is what really gives like the energy to it. But the structured part is like you can't just be all over the place. It has
art,
to be.
if there's no structure, because I like that as a definition of art as well, because if there's no structure, there's no art. It's just a feeling. The person had a mystical feeling or a higher feel, some kind of thing, they had an experience. There's no if it's not structured into anything, there's no art. No one else can share it. And also, like if you read a lot of accounts of like mystical experiences and stuff in different traditions, like if you read like Christian mystics or Indian yoga mystics and stuff, and various others I've read, often when they have an experience of light, of like a pure light or whatever, often they'll describe that they hear sounds as well. There's like weird sounds, there's screeching noises. They'll hear like different tones and different, I can't remember who it is, but one of the mystics or whoever it was, they were saying at different levels of the contemplation or the meditation or the trance or whatever it was, the different levels of the experience that seemed quite regular because they were doing this over years, you would get different sounds at different levels and stuff. So like there's like some real structure behind it. So you're, along with the emotional experience, there's some kind of music of the spheres or whatever, I mean, those are like, that was to describe the movements of the stars and the planets, but there may be more to that, and like an experience side of that as well. It's not just simply the scientist looking at stuff. It's also when you do practices that put you in tune with these things, you hear music.
Yeah. Interesting. You listen deeply enough. Did you know that the human body can purr? This is something Erik told me last week.
Did I?
Did you know that?
No.
I told you that?
Sure. Yeah, you did. I think so. This might be a false memory, but I think you told me that.
Maybe. I'd have to check the transcripts. Yeah.
Sure. No, this is another, it's one of Erik's crazy ideas that I didn't come up with, but he came up with. And what he told me was that when can you hold your bottom teeth just out below your top teeth?
Right.
To where they just start, no, don't, you have to hold them so softly next to your top teeth that they almost start chattering.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you could feel that. So where does that come from? Where does that frequency come from? What's telling your
Okay,
bottom jaw
yeah.
to actually chatter at that frequency? So you want to talk about like what frequency, what vibrate? That's a physical experience right there that you could have, that you could tell, oh, wait, there's some type of signal going through my body that is firing this whatever jaw muscle at that little tapping frequency. So you could feel your own frequency of the energy running through your body just with that.
There's a lot of
And you sit
energy
there with
trapped
that.
in your jaws, your jaw area, and your tongue and stuff from talking. And then there's a lot of like, even if you're just thinking, your throat's moving and stuff, like tiny in a tiny amount. So you've got all this tension constantly, just even when you're just thinking words in your head, you're not even speaking. There's all the words you wish you'd said but didn't say that are now tension in there. You've got all the speaking, all the sound. That's all different sounds, wavelengths, and different notes. So you've put a lot of music in there. We've put a lot of music in there ourselves as talkers.
The tension in that area is a really strong biomarker. Like, it's a good indicator for a lot of different physiological states, actually. I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah. So
like, it's a marker for, say, magnesium status, like if you're really low in magnesium, you'll be clenching all the time, which is like hyper chattering, because you're just constantly bearing down. And magnesium is one of those, one of those catch-alls. It's one of those things that's involved in everything in the body. And so if you're low in magnesium, it's kind of like a marker for your overall health. And if you have, like, if a kid is ever like kind of having if a kid is like scared, or, if anyone's scared, they'll start chattering, it's like, and fear is basically like a state of hyper sympathetic activation of the nervous system, which is like when you're just freaking out.
yeah.
So that's like, those are like the extremes of that frequency that you're talking about.
Yeah. So this is another theory. Well, the purring is just a extrapolation, but let me get past that. So when you're able to do that, or you could feel it there, but there are certain, like, you're really cold, but when you're scared, like you said, Eric, you have your nervous system is kind of on edge, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's in that, at those times when you could feel like, I feel my nerves or whatever, someone's anxious. That's actually, I'm just theorizing here, but that's maybe it's a signal that maybe you shouldn't stay in that too long, but it's also like there's a window of opportunity there where you have the ability to, the rest of your system, or your nervous system, has been ramped up at this point. So there's a bunch of energy having to feed into that to stay in that heightened state. So you're blasting through a lot more energy, and I think your mind might also be lit up a little bit more than that too, or a little bit more than normal, your baseline at that level. And for those reasons, I think you have the ability to move past certain stagnations, just either mental stagnations that you have, or even physical. And two, it allows you, it's like a heightened learning, because you're taking in so much information in those heightened states, like because you're scared, because physically, when that happens, your pupils dilate, so you're seeing more acutely in those types of situations, and you could learn. And so this is, after I did that really long breath hold, like the longest breath hold, I felt physically taxed in that area, like brought me to my limit in terms of my nerves. My nervous system felt shot, and it doesn't have to necessarily be that extreme, but that's like a deep learning right there, is to be so on edge. It really opens you up to a lot of people shy away from that state because it's not that pleasant to be in. But if you can think about it in a way that you can use that state to get over, like I said, certain stagnations that you have or thought patterns, kind of leave them behind, you could burn those up because you don't have the energy to hold on to them anymore. When you have certain things that you're holding on to, I think this is the idea that I sent to you, Kevin, initially. But you could lose them. You lose those patterns that aren't serving you because there's so much energy being used on them. When you heighten into a state of your nervous system into a state of frenzy, it's looking for all these areas where it needs to pull energy from in order to keep itself active in that state. And when you lose those, you could let go of those things. Is no longer directing the energy towards those things. You could redirect it towards new patterns or forming new synapses. And it's literally, I don't mean this in like a metaphorical way. I mean, like the signals being sent from your brain to all the parts of your body through your nervous system literally have you on edge. So that's where all your energy is being directed. And you're maybe firing more ions down that synapse, and it's getting stronger. And if you're able to use those situations and think more clearly and actually use it to learn something in those situations, where you have a semblance of control, like your intellect is controlling how you're using that energy, that it can you can elevate your level of learning, one, and two, I think I call it the mind metabolic connection. You're also like you're burning up energy in the interest of those things to form new pathways. So now I'm just repeating what I said, but you're eliminating the old structures and building new structures. And you do so through a sense of very heightened nervous system stimulation. So it could be any extreme situation that does that. But here's the thing is, most extreme situations, you are in some type of danger. But if you could control that danger where you're actually not going to get hurt or something, and then you could redirect that energy towards developing some maybe new ideas or patterns or learning something, I think it could be a really effective way of, I don't know, growth for someone. But it makes sense in my head. I don't know if it actually makes sense scientifically, but it's an interesting idea to consider, at least.
Well, there's something to the rethinking the stress response. I mean, there's actually a decent amount of research on that, where say they take two groups of people, and one group, they teach them, they have a lecture where they learn that the stress response is actually it's a preparation response. It's getting you prepared to deal with a tough situation. Like your heart rate increases to send more blood and nutrients to your tissues. Your pupils dilate, as you said, so that you can see better. You become more sensitive to your environment so that you can react more quickly. And then the other group just, they didn't get that lecture. And then they both underwent a stressful situation, and they had very different physiological responses to the stress. The group that got the lecture, they didn't have like an increase in blood pressure. Their heart rate increased, but their body wasn't like fighting that heart, the increase of the blood flow, which increases the pressure. The other group had all the negative responses to stress that most people get, and the funny thing is a lot of them probably had the same things going on in the body, but it was just how they responded to it. So like one group got nervous, they got the butterflies in the stomach. The other group, they got those same butterflies, but it was like, oh, these are just like kind of getting us ready to rise to the occasion. and they actually perform better on subsequent tests, like they had mental tests and like basically performance tests. So I mean, that's just something really quick. It wasn't even a long study. It was just like one afternoon.
It shows the level of cognitive control you can have over these things. So like
the thing is, they were learning these things from guys and lab coats, authorities. So the thing is, you have to know that we can't all have that. You have to sort of trust your own. You have to be your own authority. So you have to trust yourself that this stuff is all for your own good.
So it's like they're able to, it's self-regulation, but at the beginning you kind of need the authority figure for that to kind of overrule your doubts and things. Yeah. So you would need to develop your own level of that then becomes part of your own sort of self-regulation.
Or possibly just hearing this right now could, if you perceive any of us to be not authority figures, but at least people who've thought about this stuff and have read about it, maybe it'll change your response to stress. I mean, I know at least I did. I think Keith did too when we were doing the breath holding course with Erwan. The first part was him laying out the science, why carbon dioxide is actually good for you. That was sort of the first step in learning to tolerate carbon dioxide, is learning that, it actually has physiological benefits from some guy who obviously knows what he's talking about. And that kind of broke the wall, that broke the barrier. And then you could learn all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of I think like the first like 2 weeks, we didn't even really hold our breath at all. It was all just laying the foundation for understanding and almost bringing down your resistance level to doing that type of training. Mm-hmm. So it was preparation, really.
It's concept change. It's when you have we don't realize how much the movements we do and what you're capable of doing is conditioned by the concepts you have. If you just think usually concepts are kind of fuzzy. Sometimes they're thought out and they're just wrong, but sometimes it's just kind of subconscious hunches and feelings and habits. And when you change that, suddenly you can do something different. So like for that, I think what he's doing there is he obviously knows from his own experience that you change the concept and then that kind of feeds into what you do in a way that like a materialist scientist wouldn't think it works like that, because they're thinking more, well, nothing's changed physically. It's just placebo, throw away as placebo. But what we're talking about here is not separate. It blends into what we call placebo. It's the same kind of idea. And to me, it blends into concept change. So like as an example, if someone has this low range of movement in their shoulders or whatever, I will usually work with changing their concept of how the mechanism works and then get them to do it. So they try some experiments, some movements, then change the concept with diagrams, images, talk about it to get them to model things, maybe with their hands and stuff, then do some new movements and they'll just suddenly do a new movement. There was no like training of new movements in between. It wasn't like do a little bit more, open it out a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. It's none of that. You just jump to a new movement. It's concept change. So like part of you just doesn't believe it can move in that way, maybe. But part of you, there is a resistance because the tissues are resisting physically. But then your feelings are, that feels wrong. So I will step back from that. And same with the breath hold. Your part of you saying danger, danger. But the other part of you saying, no, it's not danger. I know all this stuff now. You have all this ammunition of this is good for you. People have done this before for 8 minutes, blah, blah, blah. And it's just self-regulation, really. It's using your inner speech, controlling the words in your head and controlling the images in your head in order to do the thing that you want to do. It's quite simple, actually, if you think about it like that. But it's when you're in it and you're just being hit by all these emotions and sensations, it's hard to remember that. But learning to remember that is what gives you the power to do it in any situation, not just, so like you were talking about that, Keith, how the breath holding makes, or Erwin, you retweeted Erwin when he's saying it makes you more confident, because that's you're aware of your own cognitive control over these things now. It's not like, so when people hear, it makes you more confident, I think they think that you had a little emotional boost from doing it because you managed to do something. You have this emotional boost and then that emotion carries over and I feel more confident in the next situation. I don't think it's that at all. I think it's you are now aware of a real ability to control to regulate yourself, and you're confident for a real reason. It's not just an emotion. It's not like affirmations, where you're trying to maintain this good feeling against the bad feelings or whatever. It's factual. You're just aware of you have a better capacity now. Yeah, and it's cognitive.
It's you have the idea that you have a better capacity now, but this is a tough thing to explain because it's not really understood with words, but your body is more comfortable in that harsh situation. But it's like there's a deeper part of you that doesn't use language to express this, but it's not freaking out the way it did previously. Which one of the things I wanted to bring up, there's a dark side to everything I just explained too, in that if you, like I said, there's a certain window or a certain door of opportunity for this learning when you have that heightened state of like your nervous system is kind of in a heightened state. The opposite side to that is if the situation gets too intense, it becomes trauma. And that's what, like, trauma is something you learned in the past to act a certain way in this situation, right? So that's the same thing I mean when I say it's like a deep learning when your nervous system is lit up like this, because it could turn bad and really stick with you. And people have learned something through a traumatic experience that they don't even know they keep with them for a lifetime. And that's the type of learning I'm talking about. But you could light up your nervous system in a way that, one, maybe you're able to release some of those traumas and imprint new patterns. And two, you are just in general more so able to learn things deeply in the same way, but they don't have to have a negative connotation in the same way that a trauma does.
It's the same principle for rites of passage, where you go into, put them in an extreme, often terrifying situation, or just weird. It's like scary just because of the weirdness, and then that's the moment where they imprint either the myth or the way things are done, or now you come out. Now you've had this, you've rewired, they've got them into such a state that then when the change happens, and I bet the ancient Greek mysteries is a similar thing as well, because there was like a whole build-up preparation you had to do for that for months, I think, and weeks at least, before you went to the mysteries. And then this event happened. It wasn't like you're just going along normally, you take a hit, and then there was like you had to get into a receptive state, you would say, for the change to happen, and then it would stick with you forever because you've rewired yourself. Mm-hmm. But being in extreme situations would get everything up. So, I mean, maybe it's the nature of humans, because we're more wired to notice problems and bad things, that for us, we have to heighten the bad stuff in order to do the rewiring. Whereas if you heighten the good stuff, it's not as easy to do it. Like pure joy, probably can, but it's probably harder to. Yeah. It's harder to create pure joy than it is to create pure fear. You create pure fear pretty quickly if you wanted to. But yeah, you're in a kind of moment where you can be changed. And there's key moments, like I think that some of the psychologists used to call that imprinting years ago, like where there's key moments in your life, whatever you imprinted at that time, that was you for life. You had an experience and now that made you this way when you were older or whatever. Or it's like that thing about the goose, the baby, the gosling, is that what you call it, baby goose? And it imprinted on a ping pong ball. It thought the ping pong ball was his mother, and it was like, now it had a thing about ping pong balls. And then when it grew up, it tried to mate with a ping pong ball, because it just it was that point in time where it was imprinted. So like, okay, so what you're talking about, Keith, is really creating those moments on purpose later in life for specific goals.
Yeah, it can if you have the knowledge that you could create that state, you have the ability to think about or plan out how you want something to go. So like you could direct it. Not that you could like implant something new to learn, but I'm saying like when you're in that state, you could be aware of it and say, okay, this may be a significant area for a significant time for me to learn something. So let me use it towards that purpose. Or the same way, same thing, you could think, oh, okay, I'm getting into this weird state. Maybe I'll try to bring myself back down because I'm seeing this situation go poorly, and I don't want to have a poor association going forward with these things. So what I'm saying is it's neither good nor bad. It's just like you can bring the awareness to know that it's you have transitioned into a malleable state when you feel your nerves chattering or are in some type of you've adrenaline rushing, or you feel like you're buzzing, like, okay, I'm in this state where I'm buzzing now. That's maybe I'm more susceptible to actually changing how my nervous system associates myself with these events or people or situation. Eventually somebody in the future will study this and confirm everything I've just said. I'm sure of it, but it's just a theory for right now. Your mic's off, Kevin.
I'm saying they'll probably name it after you.
Yeah, if they could spell my last name, maybe. But you heard it here first, really.
I like it.
I have a thing to go to at 4:00, and I gotta eat and stuff before then, so I gotta wrap up kind of soon.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, final thoughts. Erik, are you gonna buy property in Arizona?
I don't think so.
Too hot, too dry,
well,
not close enough to the ocean.
Yeah, I don't know. It was beautiful. I don't think I could live there. Maybe some recreational land, just to kind of go out there a few times a year, use it whoever I want, take friends. But I don't think so.
Okay.
I will go back though. I wouldn't. I think it would be a good place for a meetup or a retreat.
That's the only place I've been to in America. The only place I've been is Arizona, yeah. Phoenix and Scottsdale, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I went there in July. No idea what I was doing.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't know I didn't understand America, how big it was, and I asked somebody.
You thought you'd visit New York too on the trip? You're like,
yeah, I was gonna walk. Like, I go outside the hotel and I say to someone, "Oh, where's the nearest, shop for food? Whatever you call them there, 7-Elevens, whatever.
Restaurant? Oh,
no, just like a little shop." And he was like, "Oh yeah, it's nearby. Second right, first right, second left." So I started walking at 10 in the morning, half 9 in the morning. It was miles, it was like miles and miles and miles before I even got the first left. And I was walking because he was assuming that no idiot, you'd have to be a complete idiot to not be driving, and that introduced me to real heat. But it was good practice for coming here because it was worse than here.
Yeah, that's funny. I was thinking we should maybe next time, or maybe on Twitter, or just amongst ourselves, we should come up, figure out some ways that you can trigger that state of open potential for growth and rewiring of the brain.
I think I might know one, but I'll go through. I'll give a bit more thought to it.
Yeah, for sure. There have to be others too, though.
Mm-hmm. More than one, sure.
I would guess that anything you can do with one way could be done other ways, but one way is probably quicker than other ways.
Very fast.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
With that cryptic ending.
Yeah. Keep people guessing.
It's keeping the hook for next week.
Episode. I think we started out a little slow, but we really, I don't know, I started talking and then I couldn't stop talking. So,
well, I'm going to go now away and see if I can find a human body that purrs.
Oh, you look hard enough, you'll find it, man.
Yeah.
I'll find
Even
I
your
can
own.
maybe even hear one.
You got to listen.
All right.
Start with the teeth chatter, though. That's the key.
Enjoy that.